Okay, hi guys. This is Ed again, and you might be watching this on Atheist, the Bird with No Cage, or our other channel, which is English from Canada with Eddie. Okay, now we're putting the same video on both channels. But later on, we are going to have more organized classes. In the channel Learning English from Spanish. Jose, who is doing the camera work right now, he will be the student, and we will talk about specific things that you're learning in English coming from the Spanish language. But this one also, I invite you to watch the channel Atheist, the Bird with No Cage, just to practice listening to English, which you're doing. Okay, so today I want to talk about the same subject as I was talking about on the last video, if you happen to see that. And the subject is the coronavirus, or the COVID-19. I think we're going to call this video Creating a Phobia, because my view of what is happening with the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, as they're calling it, is that I'm convinced that there are no real health dangers. I don't think there's any danger to your health at all. I think the whole thing is a fear phobia. I'm going to call it, I think we're going to call this Creating a Phobia. And here's my take on what has happened. I don't know what, but that. Okay. My experience with the pandemic started, I think when first I heard about it was December of 2019. I think that's when it started, right? The very first stories came out of China. And here's what I got. The first story, I'm watching a news program like CNN or something, and the very first story I saw, they start talking about maybe they don't know, and I don't think they still know, maybe this virus, there was a new virus, and maybe this virus came from bats, which are the little animals like mice that have wings and they fly around. You know what bats are. They live in caves and stuff like that. And first of all, the story was maybe this thing migrated from bats to animals, and the assertion was it could have happened in China, because in China they eat bats. So they were saying maybe people could have got it from eating bats. The story was saying like bat soup is popular in this culture, my old culture, the Canadian culture. We don't eat bats. At least I don't think we eat them here either. I never heard of it. Anyway, the news story was, there's the news people talking about the story, and on the screen is a picture of a bat. Now the bat was the actual size of the picture was about this big, and it was like the bat with its mouth open, and now I was confused right away, because I'm familiar with bats from my childhood. We lived in the country in an old house, and we had many bats that lived in the attic of the building, the upstairs part of the building. And at night they would come out and they would be flying around. They're great. They catch mosquitoes and insects and eat them. That's one of their favorite foods. So I became very familiar with bats, and for me they weren't scary at all. They were like a mouse with wings on it, you know. They were little things. The body was like, I don't know, like this size, and had wings, and they weren't scary. But my point is, this story, first of all, it had this picture of a bat that was right in your face with like teeth like this sort of thing. And what does, my question was, what the hell does this have to do with the story? Maybe it came from bats, but the story wasn't that a bat had bitten somebody. The story was that Chinese people eat bats or eat bat soup or whatever, and somehow it could have got transferred to humans that way from bats. The weird part is, why do they have this scary picture of bats like this? I mean, the bat's not growling, there was no noise or anything, but it looks like a very scary animal all of a sudden. And then the next part of the story was all of these people. You've all seen the videos where everybody's dressed in these suits, full gowns, at hospitals in China. These full gowns with helmets on, with face masks or face shields, at least, the whole thing, and crazy scenes of people, they're scared, and people screaming, and everything. So this was the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic for me. That was the story. So there was all this fear around the thing, and all of the story was so far that a new virus has been found. Maybe it came from bats. They didn't have any evidence, but maybe it came from bats. But you can see my point is all of this fear mongering. So instantly, in my case, bats aren't scary to me, but a lot of people, they are. My mom was terrified of them. So you had this fear thing going on, and these people with these weird looking suits on, fully clothed protective suits and everything, and people who were supposedly sick or afraid, and they're locking people up because they had the disease. This is all going on in China. So that was my introduction, and a lot of people's introduction to the coronavirus. Ergo, creating a phobia. Now I might have mentioned it last time, I'm not sure. I have a couple of phobias. Significantly and specifically, I have a phobia, a fear of snakes, serpents. For me, even when I say the word snakes, there's a certain thing there. I instantly want to look around, you know. I don't spend all of my time fearing snakes. But if one appeared on the floor there, even though it would be a little thing like this, totally harmless, I immediately have a sense of fear and cower away from the thing, even though I know absolutely that it's harmless. It can't hurt me. It couldn't. If it has teeth, it might be able to bite me like a mouse or something like that. But anyway, I have the phobia. My whole point is that, now, my phobia, I have no idea how I got it. When I was a very small young person, say when I was 9 or 10 years old, I was not afraid of snakes. If I met a little snake, I would pick it up in my hands and, you know, talk to it and whatever, and maybe put it in my pocket. I remember going home once and going in the house and reaching in my pocket and pulling out this little snake, and he's kind of wiggling around. My mom was terrified. Get that thing out of here! Everything. So I don't know how it happened to me, but sometime later, by the time I was somewhere in my teens or late teens, I developed this humongous fear of snakes. I never got bit by a snake. I never had a bad experience with a snake that I know of. But suddenly I had this fear, you know, like I was walking along a piece of rope there on the ground. If I saw it, and it would kind of maybe look a little bit like a snake, it would startle me and I would feel fear. So I don't know where I got it, but the rest of my life I have had it, and it's a very strong phobia. If I see a snake, you know, even over there, say if there was a snake beside the pool, a little harmless snake, it would scare me, and if it came closer to me, I would be afraid. I literally running away, and I have no idea why. I know damn well the thing is harmless and can't hurt me. So I think with that story I told you about the news programs where the bat, which had really nothing to do with the story except the possibility that Chinese people eating bats or eating bat soup could have somehow got the virus from bats. That was the connection with bats. Why this story, you know, with the bats look like in the a mouth like a lion or something and is going to attack you. The scare tactics were incredible. And then the scary thing about these people in these suits that looked like they were walking on Mars or something, and people, that was the introduction to the coronavirus. From then on, it was all about fear. And the stories immediately, I mean, we know what happened in the world. People came running back to their own country. If you're in China, you left China as quickly as possible and went back to whatever country you're from, your Canada, the United States, or some country in Europe or anything. Everybody, wherever they were in the world, immediately went home and were encouraged to do so by government officials and medical officials, and just social media also, you know, where, as far as I'm concerned, much of the fear and everything, this pandemic or this what did I call it? My oh boy, word just slipped away from me. ¿Qué es la palabra? I can't say the word. My phobia of snakes is like there. As soon as I say the word snakes, I can feel that it jars me a little bit. I often call them serpents because somehow that word doesn't seem quite as scary to me. I know a woman, a Canadian woman who spends time here, or used to anyway, in the wintertime, and I knew her quite well and spent time with her, and she had the phobia. But with her, it was worse phobia than mine, because I say the word snakes makes, you know, I can feel it. With her, if in a conversation, if you said the word snake or snakes, she went into a panic. She was so afraid she might start crying or feeling very fearful or whatever, just from the word. So it's a terrible thing, and I think that is what's happening across the world right now. This thing got started with all these scary news stories and stuff like that, and even though, as I've claimed in other videos, I cannot find one case of anybody that's even had the virus. I can't find anyone who, I've heard stories about, you know, I have a friend that says her son had it. He lives in London, England. How does she know? Because he says he had it. He lives in London, England. Sorry, I'm kind of slurring my words there. He says he had it. So even if we accept that, okay, but that's somebody that's way the hell over there, said they had it, didn't tell us anything about it, didn't say if he actually tested positive or he just decided that he had it or thought that he had it. I mean, I claim that I had it too in April, but I don't know for sure. I certainly never had a test or anything like that. Anyway, my whole point is that this thing is exactly like a phobia. Like I say, I live my life, no fear of snakes whatsoever. But if one appears there, it scares the shit out of me, even the smallest snake. I mean, he can be this big, and he scares me. It's an irrational fear. So I'm not helping with this fear in this pandemic that is so unreasonable as far as I can see. But, by the way, one thing that I think is a symbol of this fear or this phobia is masks. Because I walk down the street and I meet people and they're not wearing a mask, and then all of a sudden I walk up close to a person that's wearing a mask and I'm reminded, and there's something scary looking about that. The fear is transferred by this mask thing. So part of what I'm saying, unless you have an awful good reason, don't wear a mask. If you have to, when you go into a restaurant or a store, I mean, the OXXO right down the corner here, they're very insistent that you wear a mask when you walk in. I hate it, but I try to conform. It drives my wife nuts because I argue with them. Look, I don't need a mask. But anyway, if you don't have to wear a mask, or you're in a situation where you're not concerned. I mean, I see people driving down the street on their motorcycle wearing a mask. Come on, let's get real. You don't need a mask when you're riding on a motorcycle, or you're out in the ocean with your kayak or something. You don't need a mask. So please help to stop the fear. Don't wear a mask unless you have to. It's a symbol of this fear, this phobia that we have currently. Please help to minimize that by not wearing a mask and acting the way we normally do. And I'm sure this is getting long, so that's all for today. Thank you. Bye.